So now what we're going to do is we're going to compare um, um, the use of a cash account versus the use of a properly structured life insurance policy in the infinite banking concept. So just a quick review is the idea behind the infinite banking concept is that you have valuable cash as one of your asset groups. And the cash, when we use it and we deploy it, it should be accountable. We should be accounting for that and paying back a reasonable rate of interest back to that for the use of that cash account. And I think you need to understand that first before you understand this illustration that we're going to run through here real quick. So with that being said, what I'm doing here, and I'm going to compare side by side. If we have a cash account, what you see on the screen right now, and let me just shut all that off, just so we can start at the very beginning. So what we're going to look at is if we take $50,000 per year over the next 30 years, and we're earning 1% interest, and I'm not going to take into account taxes because that just, I think, creates some confusion and some question because where the tax rate's going to be, can I deduct this? Am I in a lower bracket? Whatever it is. So let's just completely eliminate it and not take into account the tax bracket, although we need to and we should. But for this illustration, we're just going to look at what this policy could be doing, what the infinite banking concept can be doing if you're treating it correctly and using the right product. So again, the whole idea here is, we're going to be putting money away. We're going to be creating a pool of money. And from that pool of money is what we're going to use to take control of the banking function in our lives. The next part of the conversation is, well, which is the best tool? What's the proper tool to be using? And again, it's a different video, different conversation, but I look at organizations that are doing this right now, organizations like Wells Fargo and Bank of America. They use a tremendous amount of what's called bank-owned life insurance. And we can see that number anywhere with Bank of America and Wells Fargo, anywhere between $18 and $25 billion that they keep in properly structured life insurance. And the question is, why are they doing it? And so this is part of the reason why, because they think long term, unlike a consumer which thinks short term. So we have to take our consumer mind and transition over to a business mind, because really, if we're doing this correctly, we can make this a generational process for ourselves and our kids and our grandkids and everybody else that we're talking to about this idea. So with that being said, let's take a look at the cash bucket of money. Again, we're going to put $50,000. Now the number, it's all relative, right? So you might say, I don't have $50,000, this isn't for me. You can do 5, you can do 10, you can do 100. It doesn't make any difference as long as we're comparing the same apples, apples to apples. So we just use $50,000 just so we can show some numbers here and what it looks like. So this person's putting in $50,000 into a cash account, and that cash account's paying 1% interest. That might be high, might be low, depending on when you're watching this, depending where interest rates head. But let's just use 1% because it's a round, easy number to look at. So with that being said, over that 30-year period, we have 1.7, that's this number right up here on the top, $1.7 million inside of the savings account. And that's, again, not using it, not applying any IBC principles to this, just want to show you what it looks like from the ground that's never been used. Then comes into play, well, what if we take that same $50,000 over 30 years and put it into a properly structured life insurance policy? What does that look like? So that's going to be around $3.1 million. And so let me, compare this. Again, we're not doing any loans yet. $3.1 million. Now, this number could vary a little bit depending on your age and health and some other conditions, but it's going to be somewhere in that neck of the woods for this example, what I used. And so from that standpoint, you're about $1.3, $1.4 million larger just by having it in the properly structured policy. Now, people will say, well, life insurance is a bad investment. I would agree with them. It's a terrible investment, but it's a great place to store money. So then when you want to use that money to go create an external rate of return, then you have a guaranteed, liquid, safe, secure bucket of money that you can use to do those things with what I call external rates of return, right? So if it's either buying real estate, buying something that's going to be a cash flow business, whatever it might be. But the point is, just by, if you did nothing and just left it as it is, your policy has a tremendous, a lot more value than the savings account at 1%. And that's really probably the best comparison we can have, is that properly structured policy is very similar to a traditional savings account, because it's safe, secure, and liquid. That's what you want, and that's what you need if you want to take control of the banking function in your life. Now, does that happen immediately? No. The cost of acquisition is a little bit higher for the policy, and that's why you have to think long term. So let's take a look at what happens when we start applying some loans, because this is where the real where the real fun comes into play. Is that, again, if you understand the concept or the idea, because remember, infinite banking is a process, not a product. And then once you understand the process, then we can come back and say, well, what's the best product to use in that process? And I'm going to show you here today why the policy and the use of a policy loan is much better than the use of a cash account. So what happens in the first one is that, let's say we go and we take $60,000 out in year 2. And, again, you can use it for whatever you want. But again, you apply the banking principle, saying, well, we're going to do that in year 2. We're going to do 6 of these over this 30-year period. And we're going to pay that back over 4 years. So again, we're going to take a loan starting year 2, and we're going to do 6 of these loans over this time frame, and we're going to pay it back each loan over 4 years, and we're going to apply an 8% interest. Again, remember that applying a reasonable rate of interest is part of the IBC concept. So if you don't get that, I'm going to encourage you to go back to the beginning and understand what the problem is and how we're trying to tackle the problem, and then look up what's called economic value added, or EVA. It's in Nelson Nash's book. He talks about it in a number of different places, but just about applying the proper interest. And again, that number, I'm just picking 8%. Just kind of come out of thin air. We can use 10, and we can use 12. You can use whatever you want, as long as we're consistently using it across the board. And then what it's saying down here is we're going to use a cash account. And all that means is that we're going to pull the money from here to use it, and then when we pay it back, we'll pay it back, principal and interest, back into the cash account. And so when you do that $60,000 loan 6 different times and pay it back over 4 years at 8%, now this number down here at the bottom is $1.8 million. So you went from 1.756 million to $1.834 million. And again, that's this number down here in the lower right. That's just by applying the banking principles, which would make sense. We're adding an extra interest cost to that, but you need to grow that pool of money. So that's the first step in being an honest banker. Now we're going to take the same life insurance policy, and we're going to apply the same principles to it. So we're going to put $60,000, or we're going to take a loan for $60,000, do it in the second year. Let me just make sure we want to make sure we're doing apples to apples comparison. You do it 2, 6, and 4, right? So 4 years, we're going to do 8%. That payment is $18,115 per year. But instead of pulling the money out, we're going to let our money compound and continue to compound for the rest of this policy life, right? So we're not going to take the money from there. We're actually going to borrow the money, and current rates there's a number of different loan rates out there, but we're going to use 4.75% interest. That's what the insurance company is charging to use their money, because again, our money's staying inside the policy and compounding, so we're using their money, and they're just using our money as collateral. And so we do an account loan. So when we do that, just that act right there now takes us from $3.1 million up to $3.2 million. So we've added, even though we've paid interest, we've added additional money to our bottom line. Because again, that's paying off the interest to the insurance company and taking the remainder and putting it back into the policy. Now, what you can see here, now this is the interesting point is, a gentleman one time said to me one time, says that people are afraid they're afraid of an interest cost, but they don't understand what all the costs are in interest, right? So again, what we have in this scenario is that we have $43,000 worth of interest cost by doing that through a policy loan. Where over here with the cash account, we just have $9,000 in interest cost. So most people say, well, I want to avoid the $9,000. in interest cost, and that's a much lower number than the $34,000 that we had um, um, on this one, the $43,000, excuse me, on this one. But at the end of the day, $3.2 million is still more than $1.8 million. So think about that. Your money continues to compound and grow inside your policy each and every year, outpacing any cash account. Even though we have to pay interest to get access to our money, we still come out ahead above and beyond the cash account. And there will be people that say, well, I can get a better rate of return in some other investment account. And I'm not saying you can't. I'll even say you probably more than likely that's going to happen. But the point being is that this has to be safe, secure, guaranteed money if you want to take control of the banking function. This is why Bank of America keeps 20% or 25% of their Tier 1 capital in what we call bank-owned life insurance. It's the same thing we're talking about here. So with that, we can take a look at adding another loan, because it's not just one loan that's going to happen over your lifetime. It's going to be multiple loans. And so now we're adding $75,000. We'll do that in year 3. We'll do 5 of these loans over our lifetime, and who knows what they're for, right? You can make up anything you want on them. And we're going to pay that $75,000 over a 5-year period. So maybe we're buying some rental properties or whatever it might be. Now that payment is $18,000, and now we're at $1.9 million just by applying the banking principles to our money. So again, we're going to go from 1.8 to 1.9 just by adding an additional loan. Now, hopefully whatever you're purchasing with these additional loans outside of the policy has got its own growth curve. Hopefully they're growing in wealth way greater than anything else you might be putting your money in. That's where we talk about the external rate of return. If you're able to buy real estate, if you're buying wealth building assets, that's where the true value comes from. Now let's take the same loan and we're going to apply that to the policy loan. So $75,000 we're going to do in the 3rd year. Do it over. We're going to do 5 of these loans, and we're going to pay those loans back over a 5-year period at 8% rate of return. But again, we're taking a policy loan versus taking the money from the cash account. And now we have $3.28 million compared to $1.93 million. Still more, right? Still more. That's the whole point. I went from 3.2 million to 3.28 million. And so you can see that by having this money safe and secure inside your policy versus having it safe and secure inside of a cash account, you're better off. Now, some of the things that aren't seen, as part of the unseen when we're talking about this, are the additional debt or additional benefits that come along with having the money in a policy. If die, then this thing isn't pays a death benefit out to somebody. So you have a death benefit. You have protection from creditors more so than what you have in a cash account. So think of those states that you're in. If you're in a state that has, substantial or very loose ability to sue somebody, however you want to phrase that, this has some additional protection that you don't have in a cash account. And again, those aren't showing up on the bottom line like we're showing here. Those are just additional benefits, right? And so then we can go ahead and we can add a 3rd loan to this scenario. And again, it's the same thing. It's just different amount of loans. Maybe we did another loan for $150,000. We did that in the 5th year, and maybe that was you purchased a business or whatever it might be, and you just did one of those. And again, all the parameters staying. We're paying it off over 15 years, and again, cash. And now you're up to $2,051,000. Again, 1.9 million to 2,051,000. So we're going to bring the same thing in here with the policy to kind of show you how that works out as well. So there you have 2,051,000. Now you got 3,400,000. Again, the more you use it, the better it becomes, just because you're applying the banking principles. Again, this is your business, your banking business. And so hopefully the more it's being used, the more valuable it becomes. Now, there's very few people that I know that will take all their safe, secure asset and put it all 100% to work. That's where actually the use of the policy comes into, actually works a little bit better, is because the more we can store there, the more we have in reserves for either taking advantage of chaos or keeping us out of trouble, the better it looks. So it's a safe, secure place to store your money. It makes sense over the long term because it is not a short-term play. And I think the part where a lot of people get hung up is that they think, well, I'm going to compare it to 2 or 3 years out from now. And that's not truly the IBC concept and process works so much better from a long-term perspective, right? It's like anything else you do in life. If it's worth doing, then you do it for a long period of time. You have that life-changing approach to it because that's how family dynasties are generated. That's how they're made, is that they have a long-term approach. Because really, when does this break even? When's the even point? You're talking, you're talking year 9. Yeah, you're in year 9 here. You're talking that's about where it breaks even. You're 10, it's out ahead, or you're 10 or 11, that's when it's out ahead. But if you think about it, if I'm on year 10 and I'm looking out 30 years from now, and again, somebody might say, well, I'm 60 years old. Well, do you not have a next generation to look at? If you make it to age 60 right now, there's a great likelihood you're going to make it to 90. So it still applies, right? So the same concept still applies. It's not just for the young. It's not just for, a certain group. It's a thought process, and then what product we're using in that thought process. But if you can get past the short-sightedness of, what we're as consumers taught to believe. Again, what we're trying to get people to do is change their thought process from being a consumer mindset to being a business mindset. Great businesses weren't, didn't have 100% loan to value availability first year. Quite frankly, they typically have 5, 10, 15 years before they had true value rolling with them, right? Same thing here. There is a time where cash makes more sense. And if the cash makes more sense to you and all you can see out is 5, 6, 7 years, 8 years, 10 years, and that's as far out as you want to see, then maybe the IBC concept isn't for you. But for those that truly want to take control of the banking function in their lives, truly want to have a lifetime plan for themselves and the next generations, this is the way to take your family, yourselves and your family, out of the bondage of being captive by the current banking system, the current system that's out there that's trying to hold you back. And then the real important part is that once you have control of the banking function in your lives, then you're the one that's making decisions if you can start a business or buy a piece of property or do whatever it is that you want to do. Because now you have the ability to give the thumbs up or thumbs down to every project that comes across your table. Not every project should get a thumbs up. But for those that you need a loan, again, even if you're using cash, it's still, you finance everything you do. So if you're using cash, it's the same way. Now the question is, do you want, is in your world is $3,134,000, this number here, more than $1.7 million? Hopefully the answer is yes. And if we apply the banking principles to just these number of loans, then it's $3.4 million more than $2.05 billion. Again, still the answer is yes. I would entertain that you give this some thought, think through the process, give us a call, reach out to us, gladly have a lot deeper conversation. Maybe create one that's specific to you, just so you can work on it yourself. But you first have to accept what the infinite banking concept is. They have to grasp the concept first, and then let's take a look at the products that we're using. And from that point, then you can really start to grow in your banking business, in your financing business, as it were. Because this is exactly how banks think. This isn't anything revolutionary. This is exactly how banks think. So why not use the knowledge that they put together as a business and leave our consumer mind behind and start picking up a business mind, and when we start looking at how we can truly grow wealth. This is the foundation of growing wealth. This is controlling the banking function so you can go do those things that you want to do in order to grow your wealth. but you can't start there unless you're having control of the banking function, the financing function in your life.